Welcome back, Fragrance Fiend here today with a sample of Vyrao's Witchy Woo, an eau de parfum released in 2021. Might be a tiny bit of a quicker video today as I haven't really prepared for this one. It's just a very basic first impression and see where we go from there. So I've never smelt this one before and I've only smelt a tiny bit of the brand previously. They didn't really strike my interest too much, but I think this is one of the best sellers and I'm keen to see what it's like. They have a very left field creative approach, one which is quite obscure in the world of perfumery. I believe their 50ml bottles come with a Herkimer diamond crystal. This is a sample, so they like to call it a supercharged fragrance or supercharged crystal, but this does not come with a crystal, so this sample is not supercharged. I personally think it's a tiny bit of a gimmick and marketing strategy. I just want to have a good smelling perfume or something that evokes some sort of emotion, but who knows, this might do something. I have kind of spoiled myself with this one as I do know the note breakdown, but I've never smelled it before. So in the top you have Orris and Rose with the heart of nutmeg, cinnamon, black pepper. Lastly with a base of frankincense, opoponax and musk. They also tend to use a lot of natural ingredients, so I'm expecting something a little higher quality potentially. And instead of using perfume as alcohol, which is usually some grade of ethanol, they use organic sugarcane alcohol. So I'm not too sure how that changes the evaporative performance of the actual fragrance, and maybe it'll enhance projection or maybe die off faster, but today's only a first impression, so I'm only going to go over the basics of the performance. On some sites I also saw that it has a note of carrot seed, a note that I'm not particularly fond of, but let's get into it. I'm just going to go for the skin. Straight off the bat I'm getting a lot of that Orris. Orris is derived from iris, I believe it's part of the root. Orris is something I'm usually okay with unless it's in large quantities. This is actually quite overdosed, so if you like Orris you'll like this. I'm definitely getting that rose as well in the opening. Right off the top it's just super spicy. As I mentioned, it's got nutmeg, cinnamon and black pepper. That's a recipe for spiciness. Just over a minute in and it's beginning to settle a tiny bit. That Orris is delivering more of a powdery nature to the mix. The rose is somewhat minimal, but what I'm really ultimately getting here is cinnamon tea. Yeah, I'm not even joking, it's actually a mixture of cinnamon tea and chai latte. I think now that I've kind of mentally associated it to that, I'm starting to like it a tiny bit more. I'm not necessarily in love with it, as it is a little bit sharp for my liking, but there are things to appreciate about it. So the Orris is starting to get a tiny bit more powdery. It's not as sharp as that initial spray. This is 1 minute into the dry down, by the way. The rose is starting to develop a tiny bit more of a spiciness and sweetness, while the heart is very much intact. The frankincense is somewhat minimalistic. The opoponax I can't really detect too much. It is in the base, so I'm going to give it a tiny bit of time before I deconstruct that. Overall, it is actually smelling quite natural. It reminds me a bit of cinnamon tea, but at the same time a chai latte. I think there's a tiny bit of a correlation between the two. It's not necessarily something I'm liking as much as I would probably wear, but I do actually appreciate this more than I probably expected. And as I mentioned earlier, I have smelled a few Vyrao before, so I wasn't expecting too much out of it, but since I came across a sample, I thought, why not? Let's go for it. I wonder how much of a difference that crystal makes. Thankfully, I'm not picking up on that carrot seed. As mentioned, I only saw that on other retailer sites and not on the direct Vyrao website. Apparently, this one is supposed to evoke courageousness and creativity. Not really feeling that creative yet, but we'll see later. Out of all of them, this is definitely the best one I've smelt, hence why I think it's the best seller. There's nothing definably gendered about this one. I think it might lean a tiny bit more feminine due to that floral nature, but the spices do give it a tiny bit of a bite. It's actually dried down quite pleasantly as well. That initial impression was like way too much, but once I've allowed it to settle, it seems to be sitting quite nicely on my skin. Unfortunately, I have nothing else to really contribute to today's first impression. All I'm getting is cinnamon tea and chai latte. That's the best way I can kind of describe it. So if you like either of those two beverages, I'm sure you'll love this one, but it's simply not one for me. So I'm going to wrap it up early today, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.